My daughter died 7 years ago or so, I believed. Every January, I sent her husband $40,000 money I earned, running a small grocery store with aching hands and sleepless nights. I did it for my granddaughter, for my wife who died of grief believing our daughter was gone, and for the daughter I thought I had already buried. Then one quiet afternoon at the park, my 7-year-old granddaughter grabbed my sleeve and whispered, "Grandpa, please stop sending him money. Grandpa, come to the house and see." I did exactly what she said, and what I saw there nearly stopped my heart. Before we go any further, thank you for being here. If this story already caught your attention, take a second to tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It really helps this channel grow. Also, a gentle reminder, some elements have been altered for narrative and educational purposes. Any similarities are coincidental, but the truth behind the message is meant to help. I'm Stephen Harper, 68 years old, and for the past 7 years, I've been doing my best to hold what's left of my family together. That means every other Saturday I take my granddaughter Ivy, she's 7, to Riverside Park for ice cream. Chocolate chip for me, strawberry swirl for her. It's our routine, has been since her mother died. Willa was my daughter, my only child. 7 years ago, she died in a car accident on Route 9. Vehicle went off the road, caught fire. They said the body was too badly burned for an open casket. We cremated what was left. 6 months later, my wife Gloria died too. The doctors called it a heart attack, but I knew the truth. She died of a broken heart. Losing Willa killed her just as surely as that accident killed our daughter. So now it's just me, Ivy, and her father, Brad, my son-in-law. Brad's raising Ivy alone and I help out. $40,000 a year every January for the past 7 years. It's what Willa would have wanted. It's what family does. That September afternoon at the park seemed normal enough. Ivy sat beside me on our usual bench near the old oak tree, kicking her light-up sneakers and telling me about her spelling test. She'd gotten an A. I told her I was proud. She smiled that same smile Willa used to have, and for a moment everything felt okay. Then she stopped smiling. "Grandpa." Her voice dropped to a whisper. She glanced over her shoulder toward the playground, then leaned in close. "Please stop sending money." I blinked. "What?" "The money. To Daddy." Her little hand gripped my sleeve and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before: fear. "Please stop. There's something you need to see." My chest tightened. "Ivy, what are you talking about?" Just watch him, Grandpa. Watch Daddy. You'll see." She pulled away suddenly, hopping off the bench. "I have to go. He'll be mad if we're late." "Wait, Ivy, if something's wrong." "Please, Grandpa, just watch him." She wouldn't say another word. The drive to Brad's house was silent. Ivy stared out the window, clutching her backpack, like it was a life preserver. I wanted to ask more questions, but the look on her face told me not to push. "Not yet." Brad's house is a modest 2-story on Maple Street. White siding, black shutters, a lawn that's always a week past, needing a mow. I'd helped him with the down payment 4 years ago, another check I'd written without thinking twice. He was waiting on the front steps when we pulled up. "You're late," he said flatly. "Traffic," I lied. Ivy was already out of the car, head down, hurrying toward the door. Brad barely looked at her. "Go inside and start your homework." She didn't say goodbye to me, just disappeared into the house. I stood there on the sidewalk watching through the window as Ivy sat down at the dining room table. Brad walked right past her, phone pressed to his ear, not even glancing her way. Something twisted in my gut. "Patskati." I called out before he could close the door. "Is everything okay with Ivy?" He shrugged. "She's fine. Why wouldn't she be? She just seemed quiet. She's 7. Kids get moody." He paused, then added, "Hey, any chance you could send next year's payment early? Got some expenses coming up." Next year's payment. It was September. I wouldn't normally send the money until January. "What kind of expenses?" "House stuff. You know how it is." He wasn't looking at me. Forget it. January's fine. The door closed. I got back in my car and sat there, engine-running hands gripping the steering wheel. My mind was racing. Watch him, Ivy had said. There's something you need to see. $40,000 a year. $280,000 over 7 years. That was a lot of money for a man who barely said thank you, a man who couldn't even look his own daughter in the eye. I drove home as the sun set, painting the Pennsylvania sky orange and purple. The house was quiet when I got there. It's been quiet since Gloria died. Some nights I still reach for her in my sleep, forgetting for half a second that she's gone. Tonight I couldn't even think about sleep. I kept replaying every interaction I'd had with Brad over the past 7 years. The way he'd asked for money, but never sent updates about Ivy. Never invited me to dinner. Never called just to talk. He'd moved on fast after Willa died, started dating someone new within a year. I'd told myself everyone grieved differently, but what if I'd been wrong? What if there was something I'd missed? Willa's urn was sitting on my mantel downstairs. I'd kept it there for 7 years because I couldn't let go. Couldn't scatter her ashes like Gloria had wanted. It was all I had left of my daughter, or so I thought. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling. What did Ivy mean? What was I supposed to see? The night they told me Willa was dead, I didn't believe them. It was March 15th, 2017. 2 officers stood on my front porch at 3 in the morning, their faces carefully neutral in that way cops learn to do when they're about to destroy your world. Behind them, the street was empty and cold. I remember thinking it was too quiet for news like that. There's been an accident on Route 9, the older one said. Your daughter's vehicle went off the road. Vehicle, not car, not Willa's Honda. Vehicle. Like using a distant word could soften what came next. She's at the hospital, I asked, already reaching for my coat. Gloria was behind me, gripping my arm. The officer shook his head. Sir, I'm sorry. There was a fire. Your son-in-law identified her from dental records. That's when Gloria's knees buckled. The details came in pieces over the following days. Willa had been driving home late from a friend's house, Natalie Hughes, her best friend since college. The car had veered off Route 9 near mile marker 47, hit a tree, and caught fire. By the time emergency crews arrived, the vehicle was fully engulfed. They said she died on impact. They said she didn't suffer. I've never been sure if that was true or just something they tell families. The funeral was closed casket. Had to be. Brad stood beside me at the service, Ivy on his hip. She was barely 6 months old then. And I remember thinking how wrong it was that my daughter's baby would never remember her mother's face. Never hear her laugh. Never know how Willa used to sing off-key in the shower or how she cried during sappy commercials. They gave us an urn, simple brass about the size of a shoebox. It sat on our mantel for a week before Gloria could even look at it. We should scatter her ashes at the lake, she said one morning, voice hollow. Remember how much she loved it there. We'd spent every summer at Lake Rayburn when Willa was growing up. She'd learned to swim there, caught her first fish, kissed her first boyfriend under the dock. Gloria was right, it was the perfect place. But then Gloria died. 6 months after we buried our daughter, my wife's heart gave out. Just stopped. The doctors called it cardiac arrest, but I knew better. You can die of a broken heart. I watched it happen. She got thinner, quieter, more distant every day, until one morning I woke up and she was gone. Found her in the kitchen, collapsed by the coffee maker, the same one Willa had bought us for Christmas 3 years earlier. After that, I couldn't bring myself to scatter the ashes. Couldn't let go of that urn. It felt like letting go of Willa all over again, and I'd already lost too much. So it stayed on the mantel. Still does. 7 years now. Harper Family Market kept me going. The store's been in my family for 35 years. My father started it back in 1989, and I took over when he retired. It's nothing fancy. Just a neighborhood grocery on the corner of 5th and Chestnut. The kind of place where people know your name and pay with crumpled bills from their jacket pockets. Mrs. Patterson buys her tea there every Tuesday. Old Joe Fletcher gets his lottery tickets every Friday. They all knew Willa. They all came to the funeral. After Gloria died, the store became my anchor. I'd open at 6 every morning, stock shelves ring up customers close at 8. The routine kept me sane, kept me from thinking too much about the empty house waiting for me at the end of each day, and I kept my promise to Willa. Before she died, she'd made me swear that if anything ever happened to her, I'd take care of Ivy, make sure she had everything she needed. So I did. $40,000 a year sent to Brad every January like clockwork. It wasn't about the money. It was about keeping my daughter's memory alive, about making sure Ivy had opportunities, stability, a future. Brad never said much about it. A quick thanks in a text message, maybe. No updates on how the money was being used. No invitations to see Ivy more than our every other Saturday ice cream trips. I told myself he was just private, that grief made people withdraw. But Ivy's words at the park kept circling back. Please stop sending money. There's something you need to see. I stood in front of Willa's urn that night after driving home from Brad's house. Just stood there in my living room, staring at it in the dim light from the street lamp outside. 7 years I'd kept this thing. 7 years I'd honored it like it was sacred. What if something was wrong? What if Ivy knew something I didn't? I thought about the accident again. The details that never quite added up. How Willa had been driving on Route 9, a road she knew by heart, and somehow lost control on a clear night. How the fire had been so intense there was nothing left to identify. How Brad had been the one to confirm it was her. I'd never questioned it. Why would I? Brad was her husband. He loved her. And I was drowning in my own grief, trying to keep Gloria alive, trying to keep myself from falling apart. But now, standing there in the quiet house with Ivy's frightened voice echoing in my head, I started to wonder, what had I missed? What was I still missing? For 7 years, I'd kept my promise. I'd sent the money. I'd trusted Brad. I'd believed the story they told me about the accident and the fire and the urn full of ashes. But now Ivy's words made me wonder, what was I really paying for? I saw the woman who would change everything on a Tuesday morning. The days after Ivy's warning at the park had been restless. I went through the motions, opening the store at 6 stocking shelves, helping customers, but my thoughts kept circling back to her words. Watch him. There's something you need to see. I tried. I drove past Brad's house twice, parked down the street like a nervous fool, and watched. Nothing seemed out of place. Just a man leaving for work, coming home, living his life. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe Ivy had been confused the way children sometimes are. That's what I told myself anyway. Tuesday mornings at Harper Family Market are predictable. Mrs. Patterson comes in around 7 for her tea. Old Joe Fletcher arrives at 8 for lottery tickets and gum. By 9, there's a brief rush of people grabbing coffee before work. I know their routines. They know mine. It's comfortable. The woman walked in at 9:15. I noticed her immediately because she wasn't a regular. Strangers happen, but something about her made me look twice. Mid-30s dark hair pulled into a ponytail, jeans, and an expensive-looking leather jacket. She moved with confidence, like she knew exactly where she was going. She went straight to the coffee aisle. I stood behind the register, sorting receipts, my hands stiff with arthritis. My knuckles ached, and I'd already dropped a roll of quarters that morning. Age had a way of slowing everything down. The woman placed a bag of ground coffee and a small jar of cinnamon on the counter. That all for you? I asked. Yes. Her voice was clipped. Not rude, just distant. She handed me a 20 without looking up. 8.47's your change. She took it and turned to leave. That should have been the end of it. But as she passed me, something tugged at my memory. The way she moved. The shape of her face. Something familiar I couldn't place. Ma'am, I called. She stopped and glanced back. Yes. Have we met before? Her expression didn't change. I don't think so. You just remind me of someone. I hear that a lot. She pushed through the door and left. I stood there staring after her, trying to remember who she reminded me of. The harder I tried, the further it slipped away. 20 minutes later, I stepped outside to bring in the sandwich board sign. That's when I saw her again. She stood across the street beside a silver sedan. And she wasn't alone. Brad was with her. They were talking. Brad leaned against the car, relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years. She said something, and he laughed. Then she touched his arm briefly and got into the driver's seat. Brad walked around and climbed into the passenger side. I stood frozen sandwich board forgotten in my hands, watching the car pull away down 5th Street. Questions raced through my mind. Who was she? Why was Brad meeting her here? Why hadn't he mentioned her? I thought about how she avoided my eyes, how quickly she left. Coffee and cinnamon? Just those 2 items. Nothing else. Coffee and cinnamon. The combination unsettled me, though I couldn't explain why. I brought the sign inside, locked the door, and stood alone in the quiet store. The lights hummed. Cars passed outside. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt right. Ivy's voice echoed again. Watch him. I had watched, and now I had seen something. But I didn't understand it yet. Brad had never mentioned a woman. After Willa died, he'd said he dated a little nothing serious. He never introduced anyone to Ivy or me. So who was this woman? And why now? I pulled out my phone and stared at it. Roger Stevens had been my friend for 40 years. We met when his kids went to school with Willa. He'd been a detective for 30 years before retiring. He knew how to read situations, how to find answers when things didn't add up. I hadn't wanted to bother him, hadn't wanted to admit I might be chasing shadows because of something a child said. But now there was a woman I couldn't place. A woman meeting Brad outside my store. A woman who bought coffee and cinnamon and left like she didn't want to be remembered. I opened Roger's contact and typed a message. Need to talk. Can you come by the store? His reply came quickly. Be there in 20. I set the phone down and looked around the store. The shelves I'd stocked for decades. The register that had served generations. The coffee aisle where the woman had stood minutes earlier. Everything looked the same. But deep in my gut, where instinct lives, I knew something was very wrong. Who was she? And why was she with Brad? When you need to find the truth, you call someone who knows how to look for lies. Roger Stevens had been my friend for 40 years, and in that time I'd learned that he had a particular way of listening. Not the polite nodding most people do while waiting for their turn to talk, but real listening, the kind where he'd tilt his head slightly, eyes focused, picking apart every word like he was solving a puzzle. He walked into Harper Family Market 23 minutes after I'd sent the text. Gray hair, cut military short jeans, and a flannel shirt, reading glasses hanging from a cord around his neck. 67 years old, and still moved like a man who'd spent 3 decades chasing criminals through back alleys. You look like hell, he said by way of greeting. Thanks, Roger. He glanced around the empty store. You closed. Should've flipped the sign. Figured we needed privacy. So it must be serious. He pulled up a stool behind the counter and settled in. What's going on? I didn't know where to start, so I started with Ivy. Told him about the ice cream at the park. The whisper, the fear in her eyes when she'd said, watch him. Roger didn't interrupt, just pulled a small notebook from his pocket. He always carried one even in retirement, and jotted down notes. Then I told him about this morning. The woman with the dark hair and leather jacket. Coffee and cinnamon. The way she'd avoided my eyes. How I'd seen her 20 minutes later getting into a car with Brad. You get a plate number? Roger asked. No, I was too surprised. Description of the vehicle. Silver sedan. Maybe a Honda or Toyota. I wasn't paying attention to the car. He made another note. What about the woman? Height, weight, distinguishing features. I thought back, trying to remember details. 5'6", maybe 5'7". Thin, dark hair in a ponytail. Mid-30s. Expensive-looking leather jacket, brown with zippers. You said she reminded you of someone. Yeah, but I can't place it. Just a feeling. Roger tapped his pen against the notebook. And Brad's never mentioned a woman. Never. But you've been giving him $40,000 a year for 7 years. For Ivy, I said quickly. The money's for Ivy. Right. Roger's tone was neutral, but I knew what he was thinking. Stephen, when's the last time Brad gave you an update on how that money's being used? I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't. Not a real answer anyway. Brad had never sent receipts, never explained expenses, just accepted the check every January with a quick thanks and moved on. He's raising a daughter alone. I said, defensive now. I'm sure it's going to good use. I'm sure. Roger set his pen down and looked at me. But Ivy told you to stop sending money and to watch Brad. That's not normal, Stephen. 7-year-olds don't say things like that unless something's wrong. I know. So what do you want me to do? That was the question, wasn't it? I'd called Roger because some part of me knew I needed help. But saying it out loud felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. I need to know what's going on, I said finally. I need to know if Ivy's safe. If Brad's, I don't know, doing something he shouldn't be. Roger leaned back on the stool, arms crossed. You want surveillance? Is that legal? On a public street, watching someone's comings and goings from outside their property. He shrugged. Not illegal. Not particularly ethical if you're doing it to a family member, but not illegal. The word family hit harder than it should have. Brad wasn't blood, but he was Willa's husband, Ivy's father. For 7 years, I'd sent him money because that's what family did. Now I was talking about spying on him like he was a suspect. I don't want to betray his trust, I said quietly. Then don't. Roger's voice was firm. Go home. Forget about the woman. Forget about Ivy's warning. Tell yourself everything's fine and keep writing those checks. I looked up sharply. You think I should ignore this? No. He met my eyes. I think you need to decide what matters more, Brad's trust or Ivy's safety. The words hung in the air between us. She's 7 years old, Roger continued. She came to you scared enough to whisper a warning in a park. She told you to stop sending money and to watch her father. Kids that age don't make things up, Stephen. They don't have the imagination for it. If Ivy's worried, there's a reason. I thought about Ivy's face at the park. The way she'd gripped my sleeve. The fear in her eyes. What do we do? I asked. Roger picked up his pen again. We start simple. I've still got some equipment from my detective days, cameras, recording devices, all legal for private investigation purposes. We set up outside Brad's house. Watch who comes and goes. See if the mystery woman shows up again. Track his routine. Look for patterns. For how long? As long as it takes. He flipped to a fresh page in his notebook. Could be a few days. Could be a couple weeks. Depends on what we find. And if we find nothing, then you'll know Ivy was confused, and you can sleep better at night. Roger looked at me over his reading glasses. But I've been doing this a long time, Stephen. And my gut says we're going to find something. Mine did too. That was the problem. When do we start? I asked. Tomorrow morning. I'll bring the equipment. We'll park down the street from Brad's place, see what happens. He stood tucking the notebook back into his pocket. Get some rest tonight. Once we start this, you need to be ready for whatever we find. I nodded, but I knew I wouldn't rest. Hadn't really rested since Ivy's whisper at the park. Roger headed for the door, then paused with his hand on the frame. Stephen, you're doing the right thing. Protecting a kid always is. Even if it means going behind Brad's back, especially then. He pushed the door open and the little bell above it chimed. See you tomorrow, 6 a.m. The door closed behind him, and I was alone in the store again. I stood there for a long moment, looking at the coffee aisle where the woman had stood that morning, at the register where she'd paid in cash, at the front window where I'd watched her drive away with Brad. Tomorrow we'd start watching, start looking for answers. And I'd cross a line I'd never imagined crossing. As I drove home, I felt like I was crossing a line, but I had to know. For Ivy, money tells a story. I just had to read it. Before we started watching Brad, I needed to look at my own records. That evening, I spread 7 years of bank statements across my kitchen table. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old wood settling. I'd made coffee strong black, the way Gloria used to make it when we'd sit up late doing taxes or planning Willa's college fund. The mug sat untouched beside me as I worked, steam rising into the dim light above the table. January 2018. $40,000 wired to Bradley Wallace. The memo line read, "Family support." January 2019. Same amount. Same memo. I went through every year. 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. $40,000 every single time like clockwork. $280,000 total. I'd known the amount, obviously. I wrote the checks, authorized the transfers, but seeing it laid out like this 7 years in a row, 7 identical transactions, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. That was a fortune. A small fortune maybe, but more money than most people saw in a lifetime. And what did I have to show for it? I pulled out a shoebox I kept in the hall closet. The one with receipts and correspondence, anything related to Brad and Ivy. I sorted through 7 years of paperwork, looking for proof that the money had been used properly, proof that Brad was grateful, proof of anything, really. What I found was nothing. No thank you notes. No updates on Ivy's education or activities. No pictures of school events or birthday parties. Not a single piece of paper showing how the money had been spent or why it was needed. The only communications I had were text messages, and they were brief. Almost cold. In January 2019, he'd written, "Got the transfer, thanks." The next year, just received, appreciate it. By 2021, it was down to transfer came through. Not even a full sentence most years. Just acknowledgement that he'd taken the money and moved on. I pulled up my phone and scrolled back through our text history. Hundreds of messages over 7 years, and almost all of them were initiated by me. I'd ask how Ivy was doing in school. Could I take her to the park this weekend? Did she need winter clothes? I could pick some up. Brad's responses were always short. "She's fine." "Sure." "We're good." Never details. Never stories about what Ivy was learning or who her friends were. Never invitations to come over for dinner or join them for anything. Just the bare minimum required to keep me from asking more questions. And then there were the early requests. I flipped through my calendar checking dates. Every year, like clockwork. Brad would text me in November or December asking if I could send the payment early. In November 2019, he'd written about expenses coming up before Christmas. December 2020, house repairs. November 2021, Ivy's school stuff. I'd always said yes, always sent it early, because family helped family, and I'd promised Willa I'd take care of her daughter. But now, looking at the pattern, something felt wrong. What kind of expenses came up every single year at the exact same time? And why did a man receiving $40,000 annually need it early? What was he spending it on that couldn't wait a few weeks? I opened my laptop and pulled up Brad's social media, something I rarely did. His Facebook was sparse. A few photos of Ivy from years ago, some posts about sports teams, nothing personal. His privacy settings were tight, so I could barely see anything. But one thing I could see was that his relationship status had changed 2 years ago from widowed to in a relationship. Then 6 months later, it went back to blank. He'd never mentioned dating anyone. Never introduced anyone to Ivy or me. Who had it been? And what happened? I thought about the woman from this morning. The coffee and cinnamon. The way she'd touched Brad's arm before getting in the car. Was she the one? Or someone new? I pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. Not because I knew what I was looking for, but because Roger had taught me once that patterns emerged when you wrote things down. I wrote down everything I could think of. Brad asking for money early every November or December. Never providing updates or receipts. Minimal communication. No family involvement. The relationship status change from 2 years ago. The mystery woman today. Then I wrote down my questions. Where was the $280,000 going? Who was the woman? Why did Ivy want me to stop sending money? What was Ivy afraid of? I set the pen down and looked at the pile of bank statements. 7 years of faith. 7 years of trust. 7 years of believing Brad was doing right by my granddaughter, because I couldn't imagine a father doing anything else. But what if I'd been wrong? I got up and walked to the living room, where Willa's urn still sat on the mantel. Beside it was a framed photo of Willa, Gloria, and me at Lake Rayburn the summer before the accident. Willa was laughing, head thrown back, Gloria's arm around her shoulders. Both of them looked so alive. "I'm trying, Willa," I said to the photo. "I'm trying to do right by Ivy. I just don't know if I've been doing it the right way." The house was silent. I picked up another photo from the bookshelf, this one of Ivy from last year. She was sitting on the front steps of Brad's house, arms wrapped around her knees, not quite smiling. I'd taken it during one of my visits. At the time, I'd thought she looked thoughtful. Now I wondered if she'd looked sad. How long had she been trying to tell me something was wrong? I gathered all the bank statements and organized them by year. Added the screenshots of our text messages. The information about his social media. The notes I'd just written. Everything Roger might need to understand what we were dealing with. I put it all in a folder and set it by the front door so I wouldn't forget it in the morning. $280,000. That number kept echoing in my head. Not because it was money I couldn't afford to give. The store did well enough, and Gloria and I had been careful savers. But because it represented 7 years of promises. 7 years of trying to honor Willa's memory by taking care of her family. What if her family didn't need taking care of? What if they'd been taking advantage? I poured the cold coffee down the sink, rinsed the mug, and stood at the kitchen window looking out at the dark street. Tomorrow at 6 in the morning, Roger and I would park outside Brad's house and start watching. Start looking for answers to questions I should have asked years ago. I should have felt guilty. Should have felt like I was betraying Brad's trust by spying on him. But all I felt was determined. Ivy had asked me to watch, had trusted me enough to whisper a warning, and I'd failed her for 7 years by not asking the hard questions, by accepting Brad's silence as normal. I wouldn't fail her anymore. Tomorrow Roger and I would start watching. Whatever we found, I was ready. Some truths are buried in plain sight. The urn sat on my mantel for 7 years. I never opened it. After organizing all the bank statements and preparing the folder for Roger, I should have gone to bed. It was past 11, and we were meeting at 6 in the morning. But I stood in the living room, staring at that brass urn the way I'd stared at it 1,000 times before, and something felt different. The woman at the store had bought coffee and cinnamon. 2 items, nothing else. I'd been trying all evening to figure out why that bothered me, and now standing here in the dim light with nothing but silence and the weight of 7 years pressing down, I finally understood. Coffee and cinnamon. My eyes moved from the urn to the framed photo beside it. Willa, Gloria, and me at Lake Rayburn, all of us smiling, all of us believing we had more time. I'm sorry, I whispered to Gloria's image. I should have looked sooner. I'd avoided the urn for 7 years. Told myself it was because I couldn't let go, because opening it meant accepting that Willa was really gone. But maybe the truth was simpler. Maybe some part of me had known even then that something was wrong. I lifted the urn from the mantel. It was heavier than I remembered, about the size of a shoebox, cold brass against my palms. The lid was sealed with a simple threaded cap, the kind you could unscrew with your hands. For a long moment, I just held it. Thought about Gloria standing in this exact spot 7 years ago, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Thought about the funeral. The closed casket, Brad's face carefully neutral as he accepted condolences. Thought about Ivy, 6 months old and oblivious, sleeping through her mother's memorial service. I carried the urn to the kitchen table and set it down under the overhead light. My hands shook as I gripped the lid. "Forgive me, Willa," I said and twisted. The lid came off easily. Too easily. Like it had been opened before. Inside was a clear plastic bag tied at the top with a twist tie. Through the plastic, I could see dark powder, almost black in the harsh kitchen light. It looked like ash. Looked exactly like what you'd expect cremated remains to look like. I untied the bag and peered inside. The powder was coarse, not fine. Grainy. I reached in and let some run through my fingers. It felt wrong. Too rough. Too textured. Then I smelled it. Coffee, not the faint burnt smell of cremated remains. Not the sterile nothing of ash. But coffee. Rich, dark, unmistakable. My stomach turned. I brought the bag closer, inhaling deeper. Yes. Definitely coffee. And something else underneath it. Something sweet and spicy. Cinnamon. The kitchen tilted. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. No. No, this couldn't be right. This was Willa. This was my daughter. They'd told me it was her. Brad had identified her. The funeral home had handled everything. I dumped the contents of the bag onto the table. Brown powder spilled out in a heap. Coffee grounds, darker in some spots, lighter in others. I sifted through it with my fingers, searching for something, anything that looked like bone. Like the fragments they tell you remain after cremation. Nothing, just coffee. And mixed throughout flecks of reddish-brown that I recognized immediately from 35 years of running a grocery store. Cinnamon, ground cinnamon. I touched one of the flecks to my tongue. Sweet. Spicy. Definitely cinnamon. The powder wasn't ash. It was coffee grounds and baking spices, the kind you'd buy at any store. The kind a woman with dark hair and a leather jacket had bought from my store just this morning. For 7 years I'd kept this urn on my mantel. For 7 years I'd treated it like it was sacred. Gloria had stood here crying, had kissed the cold brass and whispered goodbye to our daughter. She'd died 6 months later, with a broken heart, believing Willa's remains were resting above our fireplace. And it was coffee, kitchen scraps, a joke. The rage hit me so hard I couldn't breathe. I swept my arm across the table, sending the urn clattering to the floor. It rang like a bell as it bounced hollow and mocking. "Damn you!" I shouted at no one. At Brad. At whoever had done this. "Damn you!" I braced my hands on the table shoulders, heaving, staring down at the pile of coffee and cinnamon scattered across the wood. 7 years. 7 years of grief. 7 years of Gloria destroying herself with sorrow. 7 years of me honoring an empty promise, paying money to a man who'd helped fake my daughter's death. Because that's what this was. Had to be. If the urn was fake, then the funeral was fake. If the funeral was fake, then maybe the body was fake. And if the body was fake, my phone was in my hand before I'd consciously decided to pick it up. I pulled up Roger's contact and called. He answered on the second ring, voice groggy. "Stephen, it's almost midnight." "The urn!" My voice came out hoarse, shaking. "Roger, the urn is fake." Silence on the other end. Then more alert. "What do you mean, fake?" I opened it. "It's not Willa, it's coffee. Coffee and cinnamon. Just like the woman at the store bought this morning." I heard rustling like he was sitting up. "You're sure?" "I'm looking at it right now. Spread all over my kitchen table." I laughed, but it came out broken. My wife died thinking our daughter's ashes were on the mantel. and it was coffee the whole time. "Stephen." Roger's voice was calm, steady, the detective voice. "Listen to me. Don't touch anything else. Don't clean it up. I'm coming over right now. They lied to us." The words felt thick in my throat. The funeral, the body. Brad identified someone who wasn't Willa. They burned someone else and gave us kitchen scraps in a brass box. "I'm 10 minutes away. Stay there. Don't call Brad. Don't call anyone. I'm coming." The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by coffee grounds and cinnamon, staring at the overturned urn on the floor. The house was silent, except for my ragged breathing. 7 years ago, they'd told me my daughter was dead. They'd shown me a closed casket. They'd handed me this urn and told me it contained her remains. And I'd believed them. Gloria had believed them. We'd mourned. We'd broken. We'd died a little bit ourselves. And it was all a lie. I looked at the scattered coffee grounds, at the cinnamon mixed throughout, at the empty brass urn lying on its side. My daughter's urn was a lie. What else had they lied about? Surveillance is mostly waiting, but when something happens, everything changes. Roger brought the cameras the next morning. He'd stayed until nearly 1 a.m., the night before, documenting the coffee grounds and cinnamon from the urn, photographing everything, and scribbling notes into his small notebook. Before leaving, he told me to get some sleep and that we'd start surveillance at dawn. I tried. I lay awake thinking about brass urns, kitchen scraps, and 7 years of trust that might have been misplaced. When Roger knocked at 5:30, I was already dressed. "You look terrible," he said, hauling 2 black duffel bags inside. "Didn't sleep? Figured." He set the bags on my kitchen table and unzipped one. Inside were cameras, lenses, recorders, and equipment I didn't recognize. "We'll park down the street from Brad's house. Public road. Legal surveillance. 2 old guys sitting in a car. What are we watching for? Patterns. Who comes and goes? When Brad leaves. When he gets home. And whether your mystery woman shows up again." He lifted a camera with a long lens. "And maybe we learn where $280,000 went." We drove to Brad's neighborhood in Roger's gray sedan, a car so ordinary it blended into any street. He parked 3 houses down, far enough not to draw attention, close enough to see the driveway and front door clearly. Then we waited. Brad left at 7:45. He backed out, turned toward the main road, and disappeared. Roger wrote the time down. "Usual schedule?" Roger asked. "It used to be. Construction management, I think." "I haven't asked in years." Roger nodded but said nothing. We stayed until noon, then rotated. Roger went home. I stayed watching the house, glancing at Ivy's upstairs window, hoping she was all right. Nothing happened that afternoon. Brad came home at 6, went inside, and didn't come back out. A normal evening. The second day followed the same rhythm. Brad left at 7:45. Came home at 6. Roger and I took shifts documenting everything. Then late afternoon on day 2, the woman arrived. The same silver sedan from the store. She pulled into Brad's driveway at 2:30, walked to the front door and unlocked it. "She has a key," I said, calling Roger. He arrived 20 minutes later with the telephoto lens. We watched as Brad and the woman sat on the couch. We couldn't hear them, but we could see her lean close, see Brad laugh, see her touch his arm with easy familiarity. They looked comfortable, familiar. "Who is she?" I asked. "When did Brad last mention dating?" Roger snapped photos. "He hasn't, not once." She stayed 2 hours. When she left, Brad walked her to her car. They stood in the driveway talking. Her hand rested on his chest. His hand settled at her waist. Then she drove off. Roger wrote down her license plate. The third day she came back. Same time, same routine. Stayed an hour. Left. That weekend when I took Ivy for ice cream, Brad didn't mention her. Didn't mention dating. Acted like nothing had changed, but something had. By day 4, we knew Brad's routine. Up at 7, gone by 7:45, home by 6. The woman visited every other afternoon. Then, on the fourth morning, everything shifted. Brad left at 10 a.m. That's new, I said. Roger started the engine. Let's see where he goes. We followed him, keeping distance. Past Harper Family Market, past familiar streets, into the industrial district on the east side of town. Warehouses, loading docks, semi-trucks. Brad turned onto East Industrial Avenue and pulled into a worn parking lot. A large brick warehouse, building 447, narrow windows, few cars. He parked near a side entrance and went inside. Roger stopped across the street behind a delivery truck. What is this place? I asked. Roger searched on his phone. Warehouse, owned by a holding company. Used for storage or light manufacturing. Why would Brad be here? That's what we need to learn. We waited. 45 minutes passed before Brad came out, got in his car, and drove away. We stayed. What do you think he's doing in there? I asked. Roger tapped his notebook. Could be storage. A side operation. Meetings. With her, maybe. He wrote down the address. We come back. Watch this place like his house. I stared at the building. Tall, sealed windows. Quiet. Empty looking. But Brad had just spent 45 minutes inside. There's something in there, I said. Roger nodded. Yeah. And we're going to find out what it is. I spent the entire night pacing through my house, unable to sleep. Unable to think about anything except the voice we'd heard inside the warehouse. The crying, the pleading, the words that replayed over and over in my head like a broken record. I've been here for 7 years. When Roger knocked on my door at 7 that morning, I had already been awake for hours. You look worse than yesterday, he said, as he carried his laptop bag inside. Didn't sleep. Figured. He placed the laptop on my kitchen table and opened it. Stephen, I need you to sit down for this. What is it? Just sit, please. I sat. Roger pulled up a video file. Remember when I told you I still have contacts on the force? One of them accessed security footage around the warehouse. All public cameras. Traffic monitoring. Completely legal. And this. He pressed play. The footage was black and white and grainy, the kind used on nightly news broadcasts. A wide shot of East Industrial Avenue appeared, the timestamp showing early afternoon 3 days earlier. Cars passed. A delivery truck. Nothing unusual. Then a woman entered the frame from the left, walking along the sidewalk. That's the warehouse, Roger said, pointing to a building in the background. That's the side entrance Brad uses. The woman walked closer to the camera. Her face was partially turned away, but as she moved, the angle shifted. Roger paused the video. Look at her face, Stephen. I leaned closer. The image wasn't sharp, but it didn't need to be. Dark hair pulled back. Thin frame. Something familiar in her posture and the way her head tilted slightly as she walked. My heart stopped. No, I whispered. Look closer. Roger zoomed in. The pixels blurred, but the shape remained. The nose. The cheekbones. That subtle tilt of the head I had seen thousands of times when she was a teenager, when she was in college, when she stood beside me on her wedding day. That's not possible, I said, though. My voice was shaking. Roger opened another window. I ran the image through facial recognition software. Compared it to Willa's driver's license photo from 7 years ago. 2 images appeared side by side. On the left, Willa's license photo from 2017. Younger, smiling. On the right, a still frame from the warehouse footage. Older, no smile. Darker hair, but the same face. 97% match, Roger said softly. Stephen, that's Willa. The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. No, she's dead. We buried her. We had a funeral. You had a closed casket funeral, Roger said gently. You cremated someone. But you never saw a body. And the urn was filled with coffee grounds. I stared at the screen, at my daughter's face, changed older but unmistakably alive. She's alive, I whispered. Yes. Willa's alive. Yes. The words didn't make sense. For 7 years, I had mourned her. I had stood at her grave, at that empty grave with its false headstone, and talked to her like she could hear me. For 7 years her urn sat on my mantle, and I believed it held her ashes, and she was alive. The grief came first. Not relief, not joy. Grief, crushing and suffocating. Grief for 7 years stolen from us. 7 years Gloria and I could have spent with our daughter. 7 years Ivy could have known her mother. Then the rage followed. Gloria died believing Willa was dead, I said, my voice breaking. She died of a broken heart, and our daughter was alive the entire time. Roger stayed silent. I paid Brad $280,000, I continued. $280,000 to care for Ivy because her mother was supposedly dead. I know. Ivy thinks she's an orphan, I said, standing abruptly. She doesn't even know her own mother is alive. How could Willa let us believe this? How could she let Gloria die thinking? Stephen, Roger said firmly. We don't know the full story. What story could possibly justify this? I don't know, he said. But think about what we heard yesterday. That voice in the warehouse. She was crying, begging. She said she'd been there for 7 years. Does that sound like someone who chose to disappear? I stopped. The words echoed again in my mind. I've been here for 7 years. She's not free, Roger continued. She's being held there, and Brad is the one keeping her. The rage shifted, focused. Brad had lied to me for 7 years, identified a body that wasn't my daughter, took my money, let Gloria die, kept Ivy from her mother. Brad had imprisoned my child. We need to go there now, I said, moving toward the door. Roger blocked me. Not yet. She's alive. She's being held prisoner. And if we rush in without knowing everything, we could make it worse, he said. We don't know who else is involved. We don't know what Brad has over her. We don't know how dangerous this is. I don't care, Stephen, Roger said, gripping my shoulders. Your daughter has survived 7 years in that warehouse. If we act recklessly, she could get hurt. The words stopped me cold. We need the full truth, Roger said. Then we get her out safely. How? We talk to her, he said. Away from Brad. The footage shows she leaves the warehouse briefly each afternoon. If she has a routine, we approach her then. And say what? We tell her you're here, Roger said quietly. That you know she's alive. That you want to help. I sank back into the chair, head in my hands. My daughter was alive, and for 7 years I had believed she was dead. I couldn't wait anymore. I had to see her. Roger had wanted to wait. Plan it out. Catch her when she came outside during the day, approach her somewhere safe. But how was I supposed to go home and sleep knowing my daughter? My daughter, who I'd mourned for 7 years, was alive. Locked in some warehouse while I sat in my empty house staring at fake ashes. I couldn't do it. So at 9 o'clock that night I got in my car. Didn't even tell Roger I was going. Just drove. He was already there when I pulled up. Standing by his car across from building 447, arms crossed, waiting. He'd known. Of course he'd known. Couldn't sleep either, I said. I figured you'd do something stupid. He wasn't smiling. If we're doing this, we do it my way. We go in, we stay calm, we listen. Got it? Yeah. I mean it, Stephen. No matter what she says. No matter how angry you get. I nodded. Didn't trust myself to speak. The warehouse looked wrong at night. Like something out of a nightmare. One light in an upper window, everything else dark. We crossed the street. The side door Brad always used. Roger tried the handle. Unlocked. He looked at me. Private investigation. Reasonable cause. Someone's in danger. I know. Just making sure we're clear. He pushed the door open. Inside was bigger than I expected. Colder. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones. High ceilings, shadows everywhere, shelves stacked with God knows what. But in the back corner, past all the industrial debris, someone had tried to make a home. A twin bed, blankets that had seen better days, a card table with a hot plate instant coffee plastic spoons, clothes on wire hangers strung between two posts, one folding chair, one battery lamp throwing weak yellow light across concrete floors, and photos, taped to the wall above the bed. Ivy, all of them. Every school picture I'd sent Brad over the years. Every birthday photo. That one from the park last summer where she'd lost her front tooth. They were here. On this wall. In this warehouse. He'd been showing them to Willa. She was sitting on the bed, staring at those photos like they were the only thing keeping her alive. When the door creaked, she looked up. 7 years. 7 years since I'd seen that face. She looked so different. Thinner. Way too thin. Hair darker, longer, pulled back in a messy ponytail. Dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in weeks. Maybe months. And something else. Something in the way she held herself. Like she was always ready to run. Dad. Just that one word. Barely a whisper. And I lost it. How could you? It came out louder than I meant. Harsher. She flinched back against the wall. How could you do this to us? I can explain. Explain. I took a step toward her. She pressed harder against the wall. Your mother died, Willa. Your mother. She died thinking you were gone. Dad, please. She cried every single day. Every single day for 6 months. Do you understand that 6 months of watching her waste away and I couldn't? My voice cracked. Says I couldn't help her because our daughter was dead. Except you weren't dead. You were here. You were here the whole time. The words were coming out wrong, too angry, too loud, but I couldn't stop them. Gloria died believing you burned to death in that car. She died of a broken heart. And you just let her. You let her die thinking, but I didn't want that. Willa was crying now. Full-on crying, sliding down the wall until she hit the floor. I never wanted any of this. Then why, I was almost shouting. Why did you do it? Why did you let us have a funeral for a stranger? Why did you let me pay Brad $280,000 to raise your daughter while you hid in a warehouse? She was sobbing so hard she couldn't speak. Just sitting there on the concrete floor, arms wrapped around her knees, shaking. Roger stepped between us. Physically stepped between us. Stephen, stop. She needs to explain, and she will. But you need to calm down. Calm down. My daughter's been lying to me for 7 years. Stephen! Roger's voice cut through everything. Look at her. I stopped. Looked. Really looked this time. She wasn't just thin. She was gaunt. Cheekbones too sharp. Wrists too small. Her clothes a faded t-shirt and jeans that didn't fit hung off her like she'd been wearing them for years. Her hair was dull, lifeless, and those scars on her arms. Small white lines. Some old, some newer. This wasn't someone who'd run away to start a new life in paradise. This was someone barely surviving. Willa, Roger said quietly. He crouched down, not getting too close. We're not here to hurt you. We're here because we want to help. Can you look at me? She raised her head, eyes red and swollen and terrified. We need to understand what happened. Roger continued. Can you tell us that? She looked at him, then at me, then at the photos of Ivy on the wall. If I tell you. Her voice was so small. If I tell you, you'll hate me. I don't hate you, I said, and weirdly I meant it. I was furious, devastated, confused as hell. But looking at her sitting there on that floor in that warehouse surrounded by photos of the daughter she'd never met, I couldn't hate her. I just need to know why. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. It's not a simple story. We have time. Do you? She laughed, but it came out broken. Do you really want to hear this? Yes. She stared at the concrete floor for a long time. So long I thought she'd changed her mind. Then she spoke. Does Ivy know about me being alive? No, she thinks you're dead. Everyone does. Another sob. Quick choked off. Maybe that's better. Willa, you don't understand, Dad. She looked up at me. Those eyes, Jesus, those eyes looked dead. You don't understand what I did, what I am. So help me understand. Silence. Just the sound of her breathing. Ragged. Uneven. Finally, 7 years ago, something happened. Something I can't take back. And the only way to survive was to disappear. To let everyone think I was dead. What happened? Roger asked. She closed her eyes. If I tell you, you have to promise me something. What? That you won't tell Ivy. Ever. She can't know about this. About me. About any of it. Willa, promise me. Her voice cracked. Please. She deserves better than me. I looked at Roger. He gave a small shake of his head. Don't promise that. Just tell us what happened, I said. She pulled her knees tighter to her chest. I need to start at the beginning, but when I'm done. She looked at me with those hollow, broken eyes. Now when I'm done, you'll understand why I can never leave here. Why I can never see Ivy. Why this is what I deserve. My throat felt tight. Willa, the truth came in pieces. But I was about to learn it was only part of the truth. Willa's voice shook as she began. It was 7 years ago. March. Natalie came over to my apartment. We lived about 20 minutes apart back then. She'd borrowed money from me. A lot of money. $5,000. She paused, looked at her hands. I needed it back. Brad and I were trying to buy a house, and I'd told Natalie that. Told her I needed the money by the end of the month. But she kept making excuses. Said she'd pay me back next week, next month, when her tax return came. It had been almost a year. Her voice got quieter. So that night I told her I needed it. Like really needed it. And she got defensive. Started saying I was being selfish, that I didn't understand how hard things were for her. What happened? Roger asked gently. Willa closed her eyes. We argued. It got loud. Brad wasn't home. He'd taken Ivy to his mom's for the weekend. It was just us. And Natalie, she said something about how I always thought I was better than her. Always had everything figured out. And she stopped, swallowed hard. When I told her she was irresponsible, that maybe if she stopped spending money on stupid things, she could pay me back. And she got in my face. Like really in my face, yelling. And I pushed her. The warehouse was completely silent. I just pushed her. Not hard. Just to get her away from me. But she stumbled backward and Willa's voice cracked. She hit the coffee table, the corner of it, right here. She touched the side of her head just above her temple. There was this sound, this awful sound, and she fell. Just collapsed. Tears were streaming down her face now. She was hurt, really hurt. There was so much. On the carpet, on the table, on my hands. And Natalie, she wasn't moving. She wasn't responding. I checked, but I couldn't feel anything. And I didn't know what to do. She was hyperventilating. Roger moved closer but didn't touch her. Breathe, Willa. Just breathe. She gulped air, nodded, kept going. I panicked. I called Brad. He came home right away. And when he walked in and saw Natalie on the floor, he just stared for a minute. Then he checked her, put his fingers on her neck. And he looked at me and said, "She's gone." My stomach turned. I couldn't stop crying, couldn't think. Brad kept saying we had to stay calm, had to figure this out. He said it was self-defense, that I'd just been protecting myself. But he said, she looked at me. He said even if it was an accident, even if it was self-defense, I'd probably still go to prison. That Natalie's family would push for charges, that I'd lose everything, lose you, lose Mom, lose Ivy. So he suggested faking your death, Roger said. Willa nodded. He said it was the only way. That if I disappeared, if everyone thought I was gone, no one would connect me to what happened with Natalie. He said he'd take care of everything, the situation, the evidence, all of it. I just had to trust him. And you did. What choice did I have? Her voice rose, desperate. My best friend had just, I was responsible for what happened. I was terrified. And Brad was so calm, so sure. He said he knew someone who could help, someone who worked at the morgue. I felt sick. Gary. I don't know his name. Brad never told me. But yeah, someone at the morgue. Brad said he could help us with the situation. Someone who had passed without family. Someone no one would miss. She shuddered. It sounds so horrible saying it out loud. What happened to Natalie? Roger asked. Brad said he took care of everything, that no one would ever find out. He wouldn't tell me where, said it was safer if I didn't know. Willa wrapped her arms around herself. And that same night he brought me here, to the warehouse, told me to stay put while he arranged everything. The accident, the funeral, all of it. The Route 9 accident, I said. Yeah. He staged it to look like I'd crashed. The car caught fire. Made sure what they found couldn't be identified. Then he came back here and told me it was done. Everyone thought I was gone. And now I had to stay hidden until it was safe. Safe from what? Roger asked. From the police. From Natalie's family. Willa's voice was hollow. Brad said they'd figure it out eventually. That someone would notice Natalie was missing. That they'd start asking questions. He said if I stayed hidden, if I just waited it out, eventually people would forget. Move on. For 7 years, she laughed bitterly. It was supposed to be temporary. A few months, maybe a year. But every time I asked when I could leave, Brad said it wasn't safe yet. That the police were still looking. That Natalie's family hired a private investigator. That people were asking questions about me. She looked at the photos of Ivy on the wall. He said it was better this way. That Ivy was safer not knowing me. That if I came back, if anyone found out what happened, Ivy would suffer for it. So I stayed. For her. To protect her. My chest felt tight. Willa, did you know I was sending Brad money? What money? True, $40,000 a year. For 7 years. To take care of Ivy. Her face went pale. I didn't know that. Brad never told me. He never mentioned it. No, he brought me food, supplies, sometimes clothes. He said he was taking care of Ivy, that she was fine. That was it. Roger and I exchanged a look. And Willa, Roger said carefully. When Natalie fell when you checked on her, are you absolutely certain she didn't make it? Willa stared at him. She was so hurt. She wasn't moving. But did you check thoroughly? Did Brad check? He put his fingers on her neck. He said she was gone. But you didn't see him do it. You were crying, panicking. You might not have seen exactly what he did. What are you saying? Roger leaned forward. I'm saying Brad told you Natalie didn't make it, but you never actually confirmed it yourself. You were in shock. You trusted him. She was... Willa stopped. I saw her fall. I saw how badly she was hurt. Head injuries can look worse than they are, Roger said. Even minor ones can cause a lot of... He paused. A lot of visible damage. It doesn't necessarily mean the worst. No. Willa shook her head. No, she's gone. I'm responsible. That's why I'm here. Roger looked at me, then back at Willa. Willa, have you seen Natalie since that night? What number? Of course not. Have you seen anything that proves what Brad told you was true? Brad said a lot of things. Roger's voice was firm. But have you actually seen proof? Willa's face crumpled. Why are you asking me this? Roger pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then turned the screen toward Willa. Because I ran Natalie Hughes's name through the system yesterday, and according to public records, she's very much alive. Willa stared at the phone, at whatever Roger was showing her, and the color drained from her face. That's not possible. This photo was taken 6 weeks ago, at a coffee shop in town. That's Natalie Hughes, alive and well. Willa looked at Roger, then at me. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. No, she finally whispered. She's gone. I saw her. I'm responsible for what happened. Roger's eyes met mine. No, Willa, I don't think you are. The truth wasn't just different from what I thought. It was the opposite. Roger pulled out his phone and showed Willa a photo. This, he said quietly, was taken 3 days ago. Willa stared at the screen. Her face went white. Actually white, like all the blood had drained out of it in an instant. That's not possible. That's Natalie Hughes, Roger said. At Corner Brew, the coffee shop on Main Street, 3 days ago, very much alive. Willa's hands were shaking. No, I saw her. She fell. She was hurt. Brad said, Brad lied. The words hung there. I looked at the photo. A woman, dark hair, mid-30s, sitting at a table with a coffee cup smiling at something off camera. She looked healthy, happy, alive. I don't understand, Willa whispered. Roger sat down on the folding chair, phone still in hand. Willa, I need you to think very carefully about that night. The fight with Natalie, when she fell. What exactly did you see? I pushed her. She stumbled, hit the table. Willa's voice was mechanical, like she'd told this story so many times it had become a script. She was hurt. On the carpet, on the table. She wasn't moving. Did you check on her yourself? I tried. I couldn't feel a pulse. There was too much, and I was panicking, But then Brad came home, Roger interrupted gently. And he took over. Right, Willa nodded slowly. And he checked. And he told you she didn't make it. And you believed him. Why wouldn't I believe him? He's my husband. He was trying to help me. Roger leaned forward. Willa, I don't think Natalie was ever hurt. I think the whole thing was staged. Silence. Complete silence. Yeah, what? Willa's voice was barely audible. The fight, the fall. The Roger paused. The scene. I think Brad and Natalie set it up. Fake scenario. Designed to make you believe you'd done something terrible. That's insane. Is it? Roger pulled up another photo. This is Brad and Natalie 2 years ago, at a restaurant in Wilmington. He swiped. Another photo. This is them last year. Same restaurant. Swipe. 6 months ago. Hotel in Newark. He kept swiping. More photos. Brad and Natalie. Together. Close. Intimate. They've been seeing each other for years, Willa. Long before that night in your apartment. Willa stared at the photos. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I think they planned this from the beginning, Roger continued. The fight was fake. Brad probably told Natalie exactly what to do, how to fall, how to make it look bad. They probably used theater makeup, fake scenario materials, made it look worse than it was. But you saw what they wanted you to see. And then Brad came in and confirmed it. Told you Natalie was gone. That you were responsible. That you had to hide. Roger's voice was firm, but not harsh. He manipulated you, Willa. He used your panic and your guilt to control you, and he's been controlling you for 7 years. The warehouse felt impossibly cold. Why? Willa asked. Why would they do that? Roger looked at me, then back at Willa. Salmonai, I said. My voice sounded strange, hollow. My money. Willa's eyes widened. For 7 years, I've been sending Brad $40,000 a year, $280,000 total, to take care of Ivy. I felt sick saying it out loud. He convinced me it was for Ivy, but it was for him and Natalie. I didn't know, Willa whispered. I swear I didn't know. I know you didn't. Roger pulled up his phone again. I've been digging into Brad's finances. He's got an offshore account, started 7 years ago right after your accident. The money's been flowing in regularly, $40,000 a year like clockwork, plus other amounts, smaller transfers. From where? I'm still working on that. But I found something else. He showed us a bank statement. 3 weeks ago, Brad transferred most of the account balance, just over $60,000, to a different account. In the Cayman Islands, my stomach dropped. He's planning to run, Roger said. Him and Natalie take the money and disappear. Willa looked like she might be sick. So none of it was real. The fight, the accident, the hiding. None of it. Oh, the hiding was real, Roger said quietly. But it wasn't to protect you from the police. It was to keep you locked up. Out of the way. So Brad could collect your father's money and live his life with Natalie without you interfering. 7 years. 7 years my daughter had been trapped in this warehouse, believing she was a criminal while her husband and her best friend lived free. Took my money. Took everything. He used me, Willa said. Her voice was shaking. He used me and Mom. Mom passed thinking I was gone. Because of them. Because of their lies. Yes. And Ivy. Ivy doesn't know me because they... She couldn't finish. I moved closer. Crouched down beside her. Put my hand on her shoulder. She flinched. Then looked at me. Really looked at me. Dad. I'm so sorry. I should have known. I should have checked. I should have... Wow, you were manipulated, I said. My throat felt tight. This isn't your fault, Willa. None of this is your fault. You were a victim. You still are. But Mom... Well, Mom would want you to live. The words came out fiercer than I intended. She would want you to be free, and she would want us to make this right. Willa's face crumpled. She started crying, not the panicked sobbing from before, but something deeper. Grief. Relief. 7 years of pain pouring out. I pulled her into a hug. My daughter. Alive. Broken. But alive. Roger gave us a minute. Then he cleared his throat. Stephen, Willa, I know this is a lot, but we need to act fast. If Brad's planning to run, we don't have much time. I pulled back. Looked at Roger. What do? We need evidence. Real evidence. The kind that'll hold up in court. Roger stood. Financial records help, but we need more. We need Brad and Natalie to confess. On record. How do we do that? Roger looked at both of us. We set a trap. We make them think they've won, that they're safe, and then we get them to admit everything. Willa wiped her eyes. How? You... Roger said, looking at her. You're the key. Brad thinks you're completely under his control. Thinks you believe everything he's told you. We use that. You want me to talk to him? But I want you to wear a wire. Confront him. Get him talking. And once he thinks you're still too scared to do anything about it, he'll tell you the truth. Willa looked terrified. But then something changed in her face. A hardness I hadn't seen before. He kept me here for 7 years, she said quietly. He let me believe I'd hurt someone. He let Mom. She stopped, swallowed. He let your mom pass thinking I was gone. He used Ivy. He used you. She looked at Roger. What do I need to do? Roger looked at both of us. If we're going to take them down, we need them to confess. And I have an idea. Every good trap needs bait. We had the perfect bait, the truth. We met at Roger's house the next morning to plan. I hadn't slept. Again. Spent the whole night thinking about Willa in that warehouse, about Brad and Natalie living free while my daughter rotted in prison. About Gloria. About Ivy. About 7 years of lies. Roger's house was small but organized. Retired detective organized. Papers stacked neatly. Coffee brewing. A dining room table covered in folders and equipment I didn't recognize. Willa sat across from me, looking small and exhausted. She'd stayed at my house last night, first time in 7 years she'd slept in an actual bed. I'd heard her crying through the wall around 3A. Emma didn't know what to say, so I just let her be. Roger set down 3 mugs of coffee and opened his laptop. Okay, here's what we need. He pulled up a document. Brad and Natalie have to confess. On record. Admissible in court. That means we need audio, clear audio, no ambiguity. How? I asked. On wire. We put a recording device on Willa. She goes back to the warehouse. When Brad shows up, and he will show up, he always does, she confronts him. Gets him talking. Once he thinks she's still under his control, he'll admit everything. Willa's coffee mug shook in her hands. You want me to talk to him? After everything. I know it's hard. Hard. Her voice cracked. He kept me locked up for 7 years. He made me think She stopped. And you want me to sit there and act like everything's fine? No, Roger said firmly. I want you to act like you know, like you're done being scared, like you're giving him one chance to tell you the truth before you go to the police. Will that work? Brad's arrogant. He thinks you're broken. Thinks you'll never stand up to him. Roger leaned forward. When you confront him, when you show strength instead of fear, he'll panic. And when people panic, they talk. They justify. They explain. They confess. Willa looked at me. Dad, I wanted to say no. Wanted to tell Roger we'd find another way. But I knew there wasn't another way. You've survived 7 years of his lies, I said quietly. You can do this. She was silent for a long moment, then nodded. Roger pulled out his phone. I've already talked to Detective Kevin Walsh. He's with the County Police Fraud Division. I worked with him for 15 years before I retired. He's solid, and he's ready to move on this. The move how, I asked. Walsh gets us the wire. Official equipment properly documented. Everything legal and admissible. He'll also position officers nearby unmarked vehicles, plain clothes. If anything goes wrong, they move in immediately. What counts as wrong? Roger's jaw tightened. If Brad threatens Willa, if things get physical, if she uses the safe word, something she can say that sounds natural, but signals she's in danger. Officers come in the second they hear it. Willa wrapped her arms around herself. What should it be? Just something you'd actually say. Something that won't sound weird in conversation. Roger thought for a moment. What about Ivy's name? If you mention Ivy, we know you need help. She nodded slowly. Okay, Ivy. Roger made a note. Walsh will have his team in position by 7 p.m. tomorrow. That's when Brad usually comes to the warehouse, right? Usually, Willa said. Sometimes earlier, if he's bringing supplies. We'll be ready either way. Roger looked at me. Stephen, you and I will be in my car across the street. Camera with telephoto lens. Backup recording equipment. Walsh's team will have the primary audio feed from Willa's wire, but we'll have secondary recording just in case. In case of what? Technical failure, interference, anything. Roger pulled out a small black device about the size of a quarter. This is the wire. Clips under clothing near the collarbone. Picks up everything within 15 feet. Battery lasts 6 hours. Willa stared at it. That tiny thing. Technology's come a long way. Roger set it down carefully. Walsh will come by tomorrow afternoon to fit it properly. Show you how it works. Test the signal. What do I say to Brad? Willa asked. When he gets there. How do I start? Roger pulled out his notebook. We'll script it. Not word for word, that'll sound fake. But general talking points. Ways to guide the conversation. He started writing. You start calm. Tell him you know. Don't say how you know, just that you do. See how he reacts. He'll deny it, Willa said. Probably. That's when you push. Tell him you know about Natalie. That she's alive. Watch his face. He'll either keep denying or he'll shift strategies. Try to explain. Justify. What if he gets angry? But then you stay calm. The calmer you are, the more he'll panic. And panic makes people sloppy. Roger looked at her. Can you do that? Stay calm even if he's angry. Willa's hands were still shaking, but her voice was steady. He stole 7 years from me. He used my daughter. He let your wife. She looked at me. He let Gloria pass away believing her daughter was gone. I can stay calm because I want him to pay for that. Something shifted in the room. Willa wasn't the broken woman from the warehouse anymore. She was angry, and anger, I was learning, could be a kind of strength. We spent the next 2 hours going over scenarios. What if Brad brought Natalie? What if he tried to leave? What if he figured out she was wired? Roger had answers for everything. Backup plans, exit strategies, Walsh's team positioning. By noon we had a plan. Not a perfect plan, but a plan. Roger made sandwiches, ham and cheese, like we were just 3 people having lunch, instead of 3 people plotting to take down a con artist and his accomplice. Willa ate half of hers. Kept looking at that tiny wire on the table. You scared? I asked, unterrified. She set down her sandwich. But I'm more angry than scared. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. She looked at me. Dad, what if this doesn't work? What if he... It'll work. But if it doesn't, then Walsh's team moves in, and we figure out plan B. I reached across the table, put my hand over hers. But you won't be alone in there. Roger and I will be right outside. Walsh's team will be listening to every word. And the second you say Ivy's name, it's over. We get you out. She nodded. Didn't look convinced, but nodded. Roger's phone buzzed. He checked it. Walsh says he'll be here tomorrow at 3 p.m. to set up the wire and go over protocols. Tomorrow, Willa whispered. Tomorrow. Roger confirmed. He looked at both of us. Tomorrow night, 7 years of lies end. One way or another. The wire was smaller than I expected. Detective Kevin Walsh held it up between his thumb and forefinger that afternoon. We were at the police station, not the main building, but a smaller office Walsh used for sensitive cases. Plain room, table, chairs. Recording equipment spread out like surgical tools. This, Walsh said, looking at Willa, is your lifeline, and ours. He was younger than Roger, maybe mid-40s. Sharp eyes. The kind of cop who'd seen everything and still cared anyway. Roger had vouched for him. Said Walsh was one of the good ones. Willa stared at the tiny device. That's it. Clips right here. Walsh gestured to his collarbone. Under your shirt. Picks up everything within 15 feet. Crystal clear audio. We'll be listening the whole time. And if something goes wrong, you say Ivy's name. Doesn't matter what context. The second we hear it, we move." Walsh's voice was firm. "You won't even finish the sentence before my team is through that door." Willa nodded. Her hands were shaking. Walsh spent 20 minutes showing her how the wire worked, how to position it, how to test it, how to move naturally so it wouldn't show or make noise. Professional. Methodical. Like he'd done this 100 times. Probably had. When he finished, he looked at her. "You don't have to do this. We can find another way." "And there is no other way," Willa said quietly. "There's always another way. Not one that gets them both. Not one that makes them pay for what they did." She looked at me, then back at Walsh. "I'm doing this." Walsh nodded. "Okay. We go at 7. My team will be in position by 6:30. Unmarked vehicles. Plain clothes. You won't see them, but they'll be close." He left to coordinate with his team. Willa and I sat in that plain room not talking, just sitting, the wire on the table between us. "Dad," she said finally. "Can I ask you something? Anything? Do you—" She stopped, started again. "Do you hate me for what I put you through?" The question caught me off guard. "What number, Willa? I let Mom pass away thinking I was gone. I let you pay all that money. I let Ivy grow up without—" "Stop." I moved my chair closer. "You didn't do any of that. Brad did. Natalie did. They manipulated you. They used you. None of this is your fault. But I should have known. I should have checked. I should have—" "You were terrified. You thought you'd hurt someone. You trusted your husband to help you." I took her hand. "Willa, you were a victim. You still are. And what you're doing tonight, confronting them, getting justice that takes more courage than anything I've ever seen." She started crying, quiet tears running down her face. "I'm proud of you," I said. "And your mom would be proud of you too." She squeezed my hand. We sat like that for a long time. Then it was 6 o'clock. Time to go. Walsh came back with the wire. Helped Willa put it on. Tested the signal. Clear as a bell. "Remember," he said. "Stay calm. Get them talking. And if anything feels wrong, say the word." "Ivy," Willa repeated. "We'll be right outside." She nodded. I wanted to pull her into a hug. Tell her we'd find another way. Keep her safe. But I knew she needed to do this. Needed to face them. Needed to end 7 years of lies. "I love you," I said. "I love you too, Dad." 7 o'clock came too fast. Roger and I were in his car, parked 50 yards from the warehouse. Far enough that Brad and Natalie wouldn't notice. Close enough that we had a clear view of the side entrance. I had binoculars. Roger had a camera with a telephoto lens. And in my ear, a small earpiece connected to Walsh's frequency. I could hear everything Willa heard. Everything her wire picked up. The waiting was terrible. Walsh's voice crackled through the earpiece. "All units in position. Target vehicle not yet arrived. Stand by." I looked at the warehouse. One light in the upper window. Willa was in there. Alone. Waiting. "She'll be fine," Roger said, seeing my face. "You don't know that. I know she's stronger than Brad thinks she is. I know she's got every cop in this county ready to move if she needs them. And I know she wants this." Roger lowered his camera. "Stephen, your daughter spent 7 years thinking she was responsible for something terrible. Tonight she becomes the one who brings them down. That's power. She needs this." I knew he was right. Didn't make the waiting easier. 8 o'clock passed. 8:15, 8:30. Maybe they're not coming," I said. "They'll come. Brad's predictable. Comes to the warehouse every few days. He'll come." At 8:47, headlights turned onto East Industrial Avenue. This is the moment everything changes. The wire is on. The police are in position. and my daughter is about to face the two people who destroyed her life. But before I take you inside that warehouse, I need to know, are you still here with me? In the comments, describe how you feel right now using just one word. Or tell me the first instinct that crossed your mind in this moment. I need to feel that you're here with me. One more thing, what follows includes some dramatized details created for storytelling and educational purposes. If that's not for you, feel free to pause here. I understand completely. But if you're ready for the truth, let's see this through together. Silver sedan. That's them, Roger said, raising his camera. Through the binoculars, I watched the car pull into the warehouse lot. Park near the side entrance. Two people got out. Brad, tall, clean-cut, wearing a jacket I'd probably paid for with my money. And Natalie, dark hair, confident walk. The woman who'd helped destroy my daughter's life. They walked to the entrance. Brad pulled out a key, opened the door. He went inside first, Walsh's voice in my ear. Target 1 has entered. Target 2 following. All units hold position. Natalie disappeared through the doorway. I held my breath. Through the earpiece I heard footsteps, the scrape of the door closing. Then Brad's voice. Casual, almost cheerful. Willa, I brought you a surprise tonight. More footsteps, lighter ones, Natalie's heels on concrete, a pause. Long enough that I started to worry something was wrong. Then Brad's voice again. But different this time. Confused. You're not surprised. Confessions don't always sound like regret. Sometimes they sound like pride. I held my breath as Willa began to speak. Through the earpiece, her voice came through clear. Calm. Steadier than I expected. Brad, I know everything. A pause. Then Brad's voice, careful now. Know what? What are you talking about? I know Natalie's alive. I know she never, Willa's voice caught, but she pushed through. I know you lied to me, both of you, for 7 years. Silence. Long enough that I gripped the binoculars tighter, ready to move. Then Natalie's voice. Cool. Almost curious. How did you find out? Roger grabbed my arm, held up his phone. Recording. Every word. Does it matter? Willa said. You lied. You made me think I'd hurt someone. You kept me locked in here while you lived your lives. Brad's voice shifted, harder now, angry. You were supposed to stay hidden. Hidden from what the police aren't looking for me, are they? They never were. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Willa's voice was stronger now. Tell me why. Why did you do this? Another pause. I could hear movement. Footsteps on concrete. Brad spoke. Because we needed the money. Just like that. No hesitation, no shame. Money, Willa repeated. Your father's money, Natalie said. Matter of fact. Like she was discussing grocery shopping. $40,000 a year. For 7 years. $280,000 total. I felt Roger's hand on my shoulder, keeping me in the car, keeping me from charging through that warehouse door. You did this for money. Willa's voice cracked. You made me believe I was responsible for you. Let my mother pass away thinking I was gone for money. It wasn't personal, Willa, Natalie said, calm, cold. It was just business. Your father had money. We needed it. You were the way to get it. My mother passed away from grief. That wasn't part of the plan. Natalie's voice didn't change, didn't soften. But honestly, it worked out. Made the whole thing more believable. Your father was devastated, never questioned anything. Roger had to physically hold me back. Wait, he hissed in my ear. Let them finish, Brad's voice again. We had it all worked out. The fight was fake. Natalie knew exactly how to fall, where to fall. We used theatrical makeup, fake scenario, made it look worse than it was. "Oh, you manipulated me," Willa said quietly. "We gave you an option," Brad corrected. "Prison or freedom. You chose freedom. You told me I'd hurt someone, and you believed it, because you wanted to believe it, because it gave you an excuse to disappear." Brad's voice was dismissive now, careless. "Come on, Willa. Don't act like you're completely innocent here. You went along with everything. Because I was terrified, because it was convenient." Natalie this time. "You didn't have to work, didn't have to take care of Ivy, didn't have to be a wife or a mother or a daughter. You just had to hide, and we took care of everything else." I wanted to scream. Wanted to tell Willa none of that was true. But I couldn't. Could only listen. How did you do it?" Willa asked. "The accident, the funeral, all of it." Brad actually laughed. "Gary, my cousin, works at the county morgue. Got us..." He paused. "Got us someone who'd passed. No family. No one to claim them. Made sure the documentation looked right." "You used someone who'd passed away." Willa's voice was horrified. "The car accident did the rest. Fire destroys evidence, makes identification impossible. Your father never questioned it. Why would he? His daughter was gone. And the urn, to coffee grounds." Natalie sounded almost amused. "And cinnamon, and some other spices. Your father kept that thing on his mantle for 7 years. Never opened it. Never checked." My hands were shaking. Roger's hand tightened on my shoulder. $280,000, Brad said. "Paid for everything. This warehouse, Natalie's apartment, our trips, our life together." "You've been together this whole time," Willa said. Not a question, a statement. "Yeah, since before you actually," Natalie said. "Brad and I have been seeing each other for almost 10 years. You just didn't notice." "And tomorrow?" Willa asked. "You said something about tomorrow." "Tomorrow we fly to Grand Cayman," Brad said. "New life, new identities. We've got just over 60,000 in the offshore account. Enough to start fresh. What about Ivy?" What about her?" Brad's voice was cold. "She's fine. Your father can keep paying. Or not. Doesn't matter to us. You're just going to abandon her." "She's not my problem anymore." Silence. Then Willa's voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it. "Take me with you." Roger's head snapped up. "We hadn't planned this." "What?" Brad sounded confused. "Take me with you. To the Cayman Islands. Let me disappear for real this time." "Why would we do that?" "Because I have nothing left here." Willa's voice was breaking. Academy Award breaking. "My father hates me. Ivy doesn't know who I am. I might as well start over too." Brad and Natalie didn't respond. I could hear them talking, whispering, too quiet for the wire to pick up clearly, then Natalie's voice louder. "We don't need her. She knows too much," Brad said. "Everything. If she talks, then we make sure she doesn't talk." She comes with us," Brad said slowly. "Or..." The silence that followed made my blood run cold. "Or what?" Willa's voice, still calm, but I could hear the edge of fear creeping in. Brad's voice dropped to a whisper, but the wire picked it up. Clear as day. "Or we make sure you never tell anyone." The moment I heard the threat, I moved. Through the earpiece, Brad's voice continued. Colder now. Final. "Willa, you're a liability. You always have been," Natalie's voice. "We can't risk her talking." Then sounds. Movement. A sharp intake of breath. Willa's voice no longer calm. "Let go of me." I didn't think. Just reacted. The car door slammed open. I was out before Roger could stop me. Stephen, wait. I didn't wait. Couldn't wait. My daughter was in there and they were threatening her, and 7 years of control snapped in that instant. Roger was behind me shouting into his radio, "All units move in, go, go, go." I heard sirens, saw headlights, police vehicles converging from every direction. But I was already running. 50 yards felt like 50 miles. The warehouse door, side entrance. I hit it with my shoulder and it flew open, inside. The scene froze for half a second. Brad gripping Willa's arm, Willa trying to pull away. Natalie standing near the exit keys in hand, ready to leave. All three of them turning toward me as the door crashed open. "Get away from my daughter." The words came out raw, furious. Brad's hand dropped. Willa stumbled backward. Then the warehouse exploded with sound and movement. "Police, hands up, police." Officers flooded through the door behind me. Black uniforms, vests, weapons drawn but pointed down. Professional, fast, overwhelming. Detective Walsh was first through. Brad Wallace, Natalie Hughes' hands where I can see them. Brad looked at the door, at the officers, at Walsh. His face went through about 5 emotions in 2 seconds. Shock, panic, calculation. Then something like defiance. He bolted, tried to anyway. Made it maybe 3 steps before Walsh moved. 1 second Brad was running. Next second he was face down on concrete with Walsh's knee on his back and handcuffs clicking into place. "You have the right to remain silent." Walsh started. Natalie didn't run. Just stood there. Raised her hands slowly, expression blank. No fear, no anger, nothing. Like getting arrested was mildly inconvenient instead of life-destroying. Another officer moved in, cuffed her, started reading rights. And Willa was standing in the middle of it, all wire still hidden under her shirt, looking lost. Looking free. Looking terrified and relieved and broken all at once. I crossed the warehouse in 3 strides and pulled her into my arms. She collapsed against me, started crying. Not quiet tears, full-on sobbing. 7 years of fear and guilt and isolation pouring out. "It's over," I said into her hair. "You're safe now. It's over. Dad." Her voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. About everything. About Mom, about the money, about—" "I will figure it out," I said, held her tighter. "Together. We'll figure it all out together." Behind us, officers were securing the scene, taking photos, collecting evidence. Walsh was on his radio, coordinating with someone. Roger appeared at my shoulder camera, still in hand, looking satisfied. Brad was being lifted to his feet. Still handcuffed, still trying to talk his way out of it. "This is a mistake," he was saying, voice loud, insistent. "We didn't do anything wrong. He looked at Willa. "She's lying. She's been lying for years. She's unstable. Everyone knows she's—" "Save it for your lawyer," Walsh interrupted. "Brad Wallace, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, grand theft, identity theft, false imprisonment, and accessory to unlawful handling of human remains. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. This is ridiculous. We were helping her. She wanted to disappear. We gave her that option." Walsh just looked at him. "We recorded everything, Mr. Wallace. Every word you said tonight. Every confession. Every threat. It's all on tape." Brad's face went white. "What?" "Well, the wire your wife was wearing. It recorded everything." Walsh held up a small device. Crystal clear audio. You admitting to staging the fight, faking Willa's death, stealing from Stephen Harper, planning to flee the country, and threatening Willa Harper when she confronted you. Brad stared, then looked at Willa. Really looked at her. Understanding dawned. You set us up. Willa wiped her eyes, looked at him, and for the first time in 7 years, she looked strong. No, she said quietly. I just told the truth. 2 officers led Brad toward the door. As they passed, he twisted back. We would have gotten away with it. His voice cracked, almost desperate. We had it all planned. We were so close. Walsh shook his head. You were never close, Mr. Wallace. They took him outside, into one of the police vehicles. Doors closed. Sirens started. Natalie was already in another vehicle. Still silent, still cold. Staring straight ahead like none of this mattered, Walsh turned to us. We'll need statements. From both of you. But we've got the primary evidence. The wire recording. Financial records Roger provided. It's solid. What happens now, I asked? They'll be arraigned tomorrow. Bail will be high. Federal charges are likely wire fraud, money laundering. We're also picking up Gary Wells tonight. Your cousin at the morgue. He added, looking at where Brad had been. Conspiracy, body theft, falsifying records. And Willa. Walsh looked at her. Gentle now. Ms. Harper is a victim, not a suspect. We'll need her testimony, but she's not being charged with anything. She's free to go. Free to go. 7 years. And she was finally free to go. Roger stepped forward, handed Walsh a folder. Financial records, bank statements, transfer receipts, everything Stephen paid over 7 years. 280,000, Walsh said, flipping through. We'll file for restitution as part of the sentencing. It'll take time, but you should get it back. I didn't care about the money, didn't care about any of it. Just cared that my daughter was standing next to me, alive, safe, free. The police vehicles started pulling away. Lights flashing. Brad and Natalie inside. Headed to county lockup. To arraignment. To trial. To consequences they'd avoided for 7 years. Walsh shook my hand. Then Roger's, then Willa's. You did good tonight, Ms. Harper. That took real courage. She nodded, couldn't speak. Walsh left. Roger packed up his equipment, said he'd meet me at the station tomorrow for statements, gave me a quick hug rare for Roger, and headed to his car. And then, it was just Willa and me, standing in that warehouse, in the place she'd called home for 7 years. Can we leave? She asked quietly. I don't want to be here anymore. Yeah, we can leave. I put my arm around her shoulders. We walked out together, past the makeshift bed, past the photos of Ivy on the wall, past 7 years of imprisonment. Outside, the night air was cool, clean, free. As the last police car disappeared into the night, I felt my daughter's hand slip into mine. We had a long road ahead. Legal proceedings, therapy, rebuilding, introducing Willa to Ivy, explaining everything. But for the first time in 7 years, we'd walk it together. Justice isn't just a verdict. It's what comes after. The trial began 3 months later in January 2025. Those 3 months between the arrests and the trial passed in a blur. Police statements, meetings with prosecutors, therapy sessions for Willa. Slow, careful steps toward healing. Introducing Willa to Ivy under supervision, at first only an hour at a time. Ivy confused and cautious. Willa patient, gentle, afraid of pushing too hard. Me standing in the middle, trying to keep everyone steady while my own emotions threatened to pull me apart. The trial was held at the federal courthouse downtown. A massive stone building with high ceilings and echoing halls, the kind of place that reminded you how small individual lives were compared to the weight of the law. Brad Wallace was charged with fraud conspiracy to commit fraud, grand theft of $280,000, false imprisonment of Willa Harper, identity theft, and accessory to the unlawful handling of human remains. Natalie Hughes faced charges of conspiracy, fraud, theft, and aiding false imprisonment. Gary Wells, Brad's cousin who worked at the county morgue, was charged with body theft, falsifying official records, and conspiracy. All three pleaded not guilty. The prosecution appeared unconcerned. I testified on the second day. I walked into the courtroom wearing the only suit I owned, the same one I had bought for Willa's funeral 7 years earlier and had never worn again. I sat in the witness box while the prosecutor asked me to tell my story. I told the jury about Willa's supposed accident, about Gloria's grief, about the urn that sat on my mantle for 7 years, about the $40,000 I sent Brad every January, about discovering the coffee grounds and cinnamon, about finding my daughter alive inside a warehouse. The defense tried to suggest I had been careless, that I should have questioned things sooner, that somehow my trust made me partially responsible. The prosecutor shut that down quickly. She showed the jury 7 years of bank records, transfer receipts, written documentation of every payment. She demonstrated that I had done exactly what any grieving father would have done, trusted family, and tried to protect his granddaughter. Willa testified on the third day. I watched from the gallery as she walked to the stand. She wore a simple blue dress we had picked out together. Her hair was longer now. She looked healthier, stronger, but when she began to speak, her voice trembled. She told them about the staged fight with Natalie, about being convinced she had hurt someone, about Brad telling her she would go to prison, about being locked inside that warehouse for 7 years, about the fear, the isolation, and the guilt that never let her sleep. She spoke about missing Ivy's first steps, her first words, her first day of school. 7 years of her child's life stolen. When she finished, the courtroom was silent. Brad's attorney tried to portray Willa as a willing participant, someone who wanted to escape her responsibilities as a mother and wife. The prosecution dismantled that claim. They played the wire recording. Brad's voice admitting the setup, Natalie's calm, deliberate confession, their plans to flee the country, their threats when Willa confronted them. The jury heard everything. They also saw the evidence. The fake urn filled with coffee grounds and cinnamon sat on a table as an exhibit. Bank records revealed offshore accounts. Surveillance footage showed Brad and Natalie together. The falsified death certificate was entered into evidence. Gary Wells testified. After taking a plea deal admitting he had provided remains from the morgue in exchange for $5,000. Natalie's attorney claimed it was a misunderstanding, that she was just Brad's girlfriend and didn't understand the full scope of his actions. The wire recording destroyed that argument. Natalie's voice was cold and precise. It was just business, Willa. Your father's money. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, they returned their verdict. Guilty on all counts. For all defendants. The courtroom erupted. Applause, gasps, objections from Brad's attorney. The judge slammed his gavel for order. I took Willa's hand. She was crying. So was I. Sentencing came a month later in March. Brad Wallace was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Natalie Hughes received 12 years. Gary Wells was sentenced to 5 years in state prison. All three were ordered to pay restitution. $280,000 to me. An additional $50,000 to Willa for emotional damages and false imprisonment. Brad's parental rights to Ivy were terminated. Family court granted me custody. Willa would rebuild her relationship with Ivy gradually with professional support. But legally, Ivy was mine to raise. Brad said nothing as the sentence was read. He stared straight ahead. Natalie looked bored, Gary cried. They were led away. 15 years. 12 years. 5 years. Numbers that could never return what they had stolen, but at least they meant accountability. 6 months after the verdict in July, life wasn't perfect. But it was ours again. Willa lived in a small apartment 10 minutes from my house. She worked part-time at Harper Family Market, learned the business, and took community college classes at night. Independence came slowly, but it came. She saw Ivy 3 times a week, sometimes at my house, sometimes at the park. Sometimes the three of us ate dinner together, and for a moment it almost felt normal. Ivy was doing better, still in therapy, still working through confusion and grief, but she was resilient. Last week she asked Willa to teach her how to braid hair. They sat on my couch for an hour, Willa's hands guiding Ivy's smaller ones. When they finished, Ivy looked at herself in the mirror and smiled. "Mom did it," she said. Willa left the room to cry. Harper Family Market was doing well. Willa had ideas for expansion, online ordering, a small cafe. I taught her the business the way my father had taught me. Some restitution money came through, not all of it. Brad and Natalie had spent most of it. About $60,000 was recovered. I placed half into a trust for Ivy's college, gave a quarter to Willa, and donated the rest to a domestic violence charity in Gloria's name. The money mattered less than I expected. Every Sunday, we visited Gloria's grave. Willa brought flowers. Ivy talked about school. I told Gloria she's home. Our girl is home. 6 months after the verdict. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours again. Peace doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from choosing to heal. 6 months later, in July 2025, I stood at Gloria's grave with Willa and Ivy. 3 generations, finally together. The cemetery was quiet that Sunday morning, filled only with bird song and a soft breeze through the trees. Gloria's headstone was simple white marble, her name, the dates, and beneath them, the words, "Beloved wife and mother. Forever in our hearts." Willa knelt and placed fresh white roses at the base. Gloria's favorite. Ivy stood beside me, holding my hand, studying the stone with the seriousness children wear when they sense something important. "Grandpa," she asked softly, "do you think Grandma knows that Mom's back?" I looked at Willa. She was crying silently, one hand pressed to the marble. "I think she knows," I said. "I really do." We stood there in silence for a long moment. Finally, Willa spoke. "Mom, I'm so sorry. For everything. For not being there when you needed me. I'm trying to be better now. For Ivy. For Dad. For you." I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "She'd be proud of you," I said. "Of how hard you're fighting." "I don't feel strong," Willa whispered. "Strong people rarely do." Ivy tugged my hand. "Can I talk to her?" "Of course." Ivy stepped forward. "Hi, Grandma Gloria. I'm Ivy. I'm 7, almost 8. Grandpa tells me stories about you, about your cookies, and how you sang even though you couldn't sing very well." She smiled. "I wish I'd met you, but Grandpa says you're watching us. So I hope you're happy, because we're getting better. Mom's home, and we're a family again." I turned away briefly, my chest tight. After the cemetery, Willa drove us to Harper Family Market. The store had fully reopened 3 months earlier. Willa worked mornings, now me afternoons. Teaching her the business felt like reclaiming something that had been paused for years. The community had been incredible. Customers came in just to say they were glad we were back, glad Willa was safe. Business was better than it had been in years. "We should expand," Willa said as we unlocked the door. "Maybe a small cafe, coffee, pastries. That costs money. We have some restitution funds. It could be an investment." I looked at her, at the spark in her eyes when she talked about the future. "All right," I said, "let's do it." She smiled wide and genuine. Inside, Ivy ran straight to the candy aisle. We let her choose one treat each visit as a reward for helping around the store. "She's good at this," Willa said, watching Ivy deliberate. "She is," I replied. "Natural business sense. Like you. Like you too." Willa paused. "You really think so?" "I know so." Most of the restitution money had come through. $280,000 recovered. I put half into a college trust for Ivy. Gave Willa $50,000 to help her stabilize. Donated the rest to a women's shelter in Gloria's name. The money helped, but it wasn't what mattered most. Willa had her own apartment now, small but warm. Ivy had a corner filled with books and toys. Therapy continued for both of them. Healing wasn't linear, but it was happening. Brad and Natalie were in federal prison. Brad's appeal was denied. No contact with Ivy allowed. I rarely thought about them anymore. We'd lost so much. 7 years. Gloria. Pieces of ourselves. But we were building something new. Forgiveness was hard. Some days the anger resurfaced. Some days grief returned without warning. But I remembered that Willa was a victim too. She survived. And she came back. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing love over bitterness. That evening, Willa and Ivy came over for dinner. Sundays were ours now. I made spaghetti using Gloria's old recipe. Ivy set the table. Willa helped with the sauce. For a moment, it felt like the life we'd once known. After dinner, we sat in the living room. Gloria's photo rested on the mantel where the urn once stood. I preferred it that way. Dad, Willa said quietly. Yes, thank you for not giving up on me. I squeezed her hand. I never will. Ivy looked up. Grandpa, can you tell me about Grandma Gloria? I smiled. What do you want to know? Everything. So I told her. About meeting Gloria at a fair. About love and laughter and mistakes and family. Ivy listened closely. Willa cried softly. She sounds amazing, Ivy said. She was. As they left that night, Ivy hugged me tight. Love you, Grandpa. Love you too. Willa smiled. See you tomorrow? 6 a.m. I'll bring coffee. I watched them drive away and felt peace settle in. Not perfect, not easy, but together, and that was enough. 7 years of lies, a lifetime of truth ahead. On a quiet Sunday evening in July, the three of us sat around my kitchen table, 3 generations finally whole. Ivy was showing Willa her drawings from school. Willa was smiling, really smiling for the first time in 7 years. And I realized this family story didn't end with revenge. It ended with redemption. And to you listening to this story, remember this. I spent 7 years carrying a weight I didn't even know was there. 7 years paying for a lie. 7 years mourning a daughter who was alive but imprisoned. And when I finally learned the truth, my first instinct wasn't justice, it was rage. I wanted Dad revenge so badly I could taste it. I wanted Brad and Natalie to suffer the way my family had suffered. But God taught me something I didn't expect. God doesn't honor revenge, He honors truth. And when I chose truth over vengeance, when I chose to trust Roger and the law, instead of taking matters into my own hands, God gave me something better than revenge. He gave me my daughter back. Looking back, would I do things differently? Absolutely. I'd ask harder questions. I wouldn't ignore the red flags. I wouldn't let grief blind me to the manipulation happening right in front of me. My advice to you, don't wait 7 years to demand the truth. Don't let people use your pain against you. Don't confuse patience with passivity. This dad revenge story taught me that revenge is temporary, but family is forever. Justice came not because I forced it, but because I trusted God's timing and let the truth speak for itself. And that family story, the one about a father, a daughter, and a granddaughter rebuilding what was stolen. That's the story worth telling. Here's my truth. Anger is easy. Forgiveness is hard. But healing is worth it. If this story touched you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. If it resonated, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to follow more stories like this, hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world. Before I go, a quick note. The stories I share often include fictionalized elements created for educational purposes. If that's not your preference, I completely understand. Feel free to explore content that better fits your interests. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. It means more than you know. 7 years of lies, but a lifetime of truth ahead.
글러브 끼고 있는 거냐? 간다. 입은 닫고 살아라. 더러워 죽겠다. 내 세윤 오빠냐 니가? 간다. 맞지? 민키 오빠 다리 얇지? 나 여기로 갔네. 차가 좋아서